One day, a giant tower suddenly popped up in the middle of the city, making folks think the world was ending, and it sent a warning straight to everyone. Those strong enough to stand against the tower answered the call and became the walkers. Before the raid on the tower, a mysterious stone appeared that could send anyone back in time while keeping their memories safe. But to make it work, you first had to break it. Everyone rushed to try out the stone, but in a blink, it vanished. One walker insisted they had no choice but to use the stone, while those who faced death or a dangerous climb chose a third path, turning back to where they started. If you could go back in time, you'd be able to fix every mistake and steer history down a completely different path. Left alone with danger staring him down, the man who hadn't touched the 99th floor since the tower rose chose to stay in the present and climb it himself. The world was a mess of chaos and ruin. A young man grabbed a package of food in the store, only to find it torn and likely defective, all while the news warned that sandstorms had filled the sky with thick dust and smog. The guy asked the girl beside him if she was stealing food from the broken boxes, while the announcer warned everyone not to leave their homes soon. Breaking news just said an earthquake shook the ground, but since it wasn't strong, no one has been hurt yet. The man scooped up the spilled food from the floor, while the news warned that the earthquake was getting worse and everyone needed to stay safe. Chaos erupted outside the window as people scrambled to hide from the disaster. The young man lifted the child to check if he was hurt, while everyone in the room watched with fear and tension. Across England and far beyond, people stared in awe at giant towers and strange weather, calling the mysterious structures that suddenly sprang up everywhere towers of nightmares. The system cheered for him, announcing he was the chosen walker destined to save the world. Those chosen for this duty were sent to the front lines and cheered by the system. But soon everyone realized this wasn't a game. A crowd gathered in the open square, staring up at the tower with no idea what to do next. Before long, the tower would finally show itself. People spotted strange creatures and wondered if they might be human, so they had to call the police. The terrible disaster finally arrived, and monsters burst out of the tower to spread across the world, wiping out a third of everyone living there. Those trapped inside the tower could only watch as the system picked walkers to save the world. One of the walkers suggested they climb the tower to save the world, so since they were already there and this nightmare would end if they made it to the top, they decided it was worth a try. Only the strongest and bravest humans remained as our last chance to survive. The walkers rushed the tower to stop the world from ending, knowing they were fighting a battle they couldn't win against the monsters. Suddenly, a wall of rocks stopped the walkers in their tracks, so one of them stepped forward and said, "Let's clear the way." The force helped clear the way, but did their effort really work? One of the walkers showed the captain a glowing stone that could take him back to the past, and while the commander warned it was a dangerous thing, Huang Chan promised to share its secrets once he had used it. The captain grabbed the stone and vanished, leaving Sakamoto to wonder if he could ever come back to the present, especially since the old scientist insisted that the truth might be much simpler than they imagined. Sakamoto told them that Huang and Chan had gone back in time, but a tear in the fabric of time and space meant Sakamoto could never find his way back. Sakamoto used science to explain how a tear in the fabric of time and space has ripped our world open. This means the commander who jumped back in time isn't the Hang and Chan everyone knows today anymore. The walker called it terrible, but Sakamoto could see in their eyes that they understood not a thing. Hang and Chan found themselves in a different time and place, but his trip to the past wouldn't change what happens now. Sakamoto claimed that the tower's artifacts had never lied, warning that the stone could send them into a time rift. And while just a theory, it was possible that using it would trap everyone in that one strange world, an effect so powerful it was beyond any human mind to understand. Then a second tower was struck by a massive lightning bolt, and before humanity is wiped out, we must find a way to stop it. Should they use the stone of return to go back in time, or stay in the tower until they die? Monsters, chaos, and destruction were spreading everywhere, making the walkers think it was the end, leaving everyone with no hope or choice but to hold onto a crystal. One of the walkers paused to wonder why so many of his friends had run away. The ones who never touched the return stone stayed behind as a squad tasked with humanity's fate. At one point, everything started to go wrong when a monster tried to attack the walkers, only for them to turn around and crush it. No walkers lost their lives in the fight, and the injured ones just needed a bit of rest to get better. The walkers were sure they could make it all the way to the top floor. On the floor rested a dragon-suppressing sword forged by a master with the power of the sun and moon to slay the beast. The walker grabbed the sword and declared, "Now we hold a weapon far more powerful." Just as Yin Huan spoke, they knew they had a real shot at making it all the way to the top. The player thought they were winning, But up on the 98th floor lay a purgatory chamber where a massive monster lived. Now everything felt like a broken old rule, and the journey they'd shared together meant nothing since they could die for no reason at all. After a fierce fight, one of the walkers was badly hurt. Before this, he always wore a smile on his face, even back then in this cursed tower. The walkers started calling him the Knight of Smiles, but now, for the first time, his face held no smile at all. The injured walker begged his friend to run away right now because they couldn't both escape, so he decided to stay behind and draw the monster's attention. The injured walker, dragging himself up the steps with the help of the wall, managed to climb the stairs. The wounded warrior climbed to the top of the tower, trusting his friend's belief that he could make it, and finally glad he had stayed. A snowy plain suddenly appeared before the tired walker's eyes. The snow monster challenged the lone walker to see if he would quit. The man promised he'd never do it, and the monster wondered if it had finally stopped chasing him, while the walker mentioned that he had been stuck on the 99th floor for 10 years. On the 98th floor, he faced many challenges, but this floor was far harder. The ice dragon Velhesis, who ruled the 99th floor, blasted a freezing stream of air that was so cold it hurt even the strongest warriors. Without the gear those walking dead left behind, the hero would have died a long time ago. He carried the dragon suppression sword from the 85th floor, the ice demon armor Yin Huan gave him, and the flame king bracelet. The young man sat at the table, nodded when the blacksmith asked if he wanted to try again, and felt sure he could succeed this time. The blacksmith at Adipose J sighed with relief when he heard those words. After killing the boss of the 50th floor, Alaminus, the group claimed the conquered settlement known as Atapapos. Even though the sky darkened every day with falling bodies, the people never lost their hope. The priests set up rescue teams to pull the wounded fighters back from the fight. The blacksmiths hammered out weapons for the brave souls who stood up for humanity. Jay Huang told us that Jay had become the final blacksmith of Apis. Jay told Jay Huang not to mention it because he was the only one Jay still worked for, even though equipment had stopped arriving from the lower floors after there used to be plenty just a few months ago. I thought this was something we should have seen coming. The young man felt like the village was empty and had forgotten what year it was. After more than 10 tower tremors shook the ground, people finally stopped climbing up, leaving the first floor completely empty. John believed humanity had been humiliated, while Jay wondered if the young man had noticed anything strange during his inspection of the tower. The boy recalled that the tower where the Stone of Return was discovered was trapped inside another tower, a nightmare within a nightmare, and he spotted strange carvings on the walls. It might have been a message from a person, but he couldn't understand it, especially since Grandma Halen had vanished 2 days ago. Time moves strangely in the tower, so if someone vanishes, they either slip back into the past or fell off the ledge. Among the last few walkers were Halen from Halen's Potion and Jay from Jay's workshop. Jang asked Jay to show him how to be a blacksmith. The snow monster asked if the man had finally stopped playing hide-and-seek, admitting that this brave soul was truly amazing for being the only one ever to climb alone to the scary 99th floor. The man told the monster he'd be lonely once the monster passed away, but the monster said that couldn't happen. The walker saw that the monster's proud armor was already cracking. After a brief and bloody fight, the walker was wounded and surprised, wondering if the man really meant to fight until the end, knowing that even if he survived, he would only end up with a terrible, empty loneliness. The injured walker claimed that this monster never knew when to shut its mouth. The young man tried to lunge again, but the monster stopped him and said he couldn't win by himself. The walker believed he had begun the raid later than everyone else, so he felt he had missed out on all the secret skills and hidden powers. So he dropped every other trick and poured all his energy into mastering just one, drilling hand-to-hand moves again and again on a dummy. The walker wielded his lunge so effectively that he obliterated over 50 million monsters, earning it a nickname from his friends, yet he felt the skill itself shifting beneath his feet. It grew faster, sharper, and stronger until his power surpassed all hidden tricks. They didn't see this trick as a skill because it didn't drain your strength, so you never got tired of fight, even though battling was always still very hard. With blood gushing out, the walker charged at the monster, shocking it because no human should ever act that way. The walker insisted one hit wasn't enough and demanded the monster tear off its own head, but the monster warned that the walker shouldn't get too confident after just one strike. The monster claimed that with 10 more walkers around, they could finally beat him. The monster added that things would have turned out differently if people hadn't been fooled by the Dream Demon Stone. He asked which stone he meant. 5 years later, the walker had claimed the 99th floor, but was finally worn out, while the system flooded with messages and the young man wondered about the mysterious Dream Demon Stone. He was promised that all the secrets waited for him on the top floor, where he had just claimed the ice dragon's sword, only to find a mysterious passage suddenly opening before the walker as the final floor came into view. The young man opened his eyes and saw memories floating before him, thinking aloud, "Is this what the tower looks like now?" as he wondered if the walker would return to the village before him. He didn't need to worry because he had forgotten about the walker and hadn't had time to get his important things ready, so he just had to wait a bit. The walker was cheered by everyone because he became the first person to finish the training of the 294th world. The walker was startled by a voice that warned him to calm down before his emotions took over. The voice added that it was already too late, so the walker shouldn't worry because he had done amazing for just being human. He stood all by himself, feeling the weight of his own feelings. The voice said the man had changed faster than expected, asked who stood before him, and the monster admitted he'd forgotten to introduce himself while too happy about this visit, noting that this man had reached the 100th floor and was unlike anyone before. He claimed he was the Devil Bistrin and the master of the Tower of Nightmares. The walker mused that if this was just training, the real game hadn't even begun yet, so while Beeston praised his quick mind, the man knew he had to show him something first. He glanced at the picture and thought it looked just like a game. Beeston pointed at the picture, saying they looked so happy that he hadn't seen that in ages, and he figured 3 was better than 2. Beast told the tale of 3 friends using pictures and cried a tear because the story was so sad. Beeston asked if the man remembered the tears, anger, and regret he once felt, wondering if remembering the past made those emotions seem useless. Bistron promised the man another shot at the game, and it felt like a perfect chance to try again. Beast explained that in their world, the only way to start again with all the future events already known was within the pages of a book. The young man stared in shock, wondering if this was truly the end instead of the moment he was meant to save the world after taking down the tower. The young man realized he'd been tricked this whole time, and he decided that no human could ever be saved. All they could do was keep fighting for the towers, because saving humanity was just a dream they couldn't afford to let go of. Beeston claimed that man had already learned everything there was to know. The walker said he would never go back into the past. Bistron told the man that no object or event could send him back to the past, and the man was surprised because he had already seen the Stone of Return. Bistron whispered that had those people never fallen for the Dream Demon's stone trick, everything would have turned out differently. Bistron quickly changed his mind, realizing it wasn't the Stone of Return, but the Stone of the Dream Demon. The Dream Demon's stone traps people in nightmares instead of sending them back in time, and he couldn't believe that some humans would go so far as to fix the past just to reach the 77th floor, proving that only people can be this obsessed. Beeston declared that they're finally ready to play for real, marking the true beginning of the game rather than a step back into the past. Bistron added that he thinks people will make the right choice. The young man thanked his friend, saying he now understood the Dream Demon's trap and vowed to destroy it before moving on. Bistron said there was nothing left, and since this was the end of the tower, the man admitted he no longer trusted anyone. The devil asked if the man had grown so weary of fake items and achievements, and Bistron eagerly offered to grant him any hidden ability or skill he desired, only for the walker to reply that he needed nothing at all. Beeston was shocked to find that the man truly didn't want to go back to his normal life. She didn't know he was hiding in the Tower of Nightmares, so he figured there must be no monsters there. The walker remembered the days when folks talked about daily troubles, while the young man tried to figure out what was happening. Beeston whispered that the man had finally realized nobody was dead, and then he asked if this truth had truly shocked him. All of Jawan's friends and family were still living, which made Beeston promise to show him something truly special. Jawan stepped into a hospital ward filled with many patients, but not one of them had woken up yet. One of the patients was actually himself, and Bistron asked if the man was shocked to see how little time had passed in the outside world compared to the decades spent inside the tower. Bistron insisted that Johan could never win because he had only just finished his training, noting that there was simply no way for humans to defeat dragons. The walker stepped into the room, carrying bottles of potions, and told Jay that the dragon was actually a relief because he'd fought them before. Jay Huan gripped a massive hammer in his hand. After 72 days of fighting without landing a single scratch, he was still alive because the dragon seemed unwilling to kill him. No matter how many days go by, he has to keep holding on to this special product that he knows will sell well. Bistin, a cultivator, said he had never seen anything like it before. The cultivator must make sure the final product reaches the Great Land, becoming even better through careful training that weeds out the weak parts and keeps only the very best. Once the chosen products are picked from the real game and start to mature, secondary processing steps in to give them water and fertilizer so they can keep growing. But one thing has appeared that refuses to move on and can simply be destroyed: keeping the soul of the tower's victim alive. But what happens when a soul is hurt by mistake? The Reapers won't just stand there doing nothing. We need to grow and sell it fast, move to the next stage, and pay off the tower's purchase debt right away. That person is so special that even the gods, who have nothing to do with demons, have reached out to him. Bistron asked what the man wanted, knowing that listening was the key to starting the real game, even though people said everyone should be judged by the same rule and wondered why he didn't just listen. Bistron clamped a hand around the man's throat and demanded again what he truly wanted, offering any skill or item he could spare, but couldn't understand why the stranger insisted on his own stubborn way. Juan promised to crush the monster and move on, but when Bistron shouted, asking what it would take to get the man to play the game, Bistron warned Juan not to be surprised, reminding him that the universe holds far more than just a single dimension. Jihan answered that he knew all about parallel universes and the multiverse. Bistron promised to make things clear, explaining that everything starts from one main path, the mighty Earth, before splitting into many different directions. Earth is just a tiny planet in a vast universe of many worlds, and we're the 294th one to be called home. Bistron explained that inside the Tower of Nightmares, the walkers can learn new skills, find fresh items, and grow stronger as they level up. Once they learn to work with the mighty Earth device, they'll finally get to step into a brand new world. Beast claimed that folks like him could steer the game, but when Jay Huang asked why bother, Beast admitted nobody really cared about it. Why did the Tower of Nightmares, out of all the strange worlds, choose to land right here on Earth? Juan and his family had to face this terrible fate simply because someone picked their world at random. Jaheen shouted for his conversation partner to stop and demanded to know why Bistin was in charge of the Tower of Nightmares. What does he gain from it? Bistin laughed, treating it like just another hobby. The monster thought the man didn't believe him, even though the man had a ton of hobbies. Among the crowd, some just stood there to watch the amazing walking monsters. Even though in a place called Paradise, humans and those creepy beasts live together in peace. Jan received a warning from the Lord that time was running out, so he had to stop harming the man and keep his silence, even as Bistron questioned if the man now believed him and Juan dismissed the whole thing as nonsense. G downed a potion to get stronger, convinced he had nothing left to fight for, yet he still couldn't beat the monster. Juan gripped his chest and wondered if he was losing his mind after seeing a bright glow appear from his fist, where tiny specks had just morphed from sugar cubes into something else entirely. Could these tiny specks be the very pieces that build our world? For the shape didn't matter since he grasped the truth in an instant. I asked Bistron if the monarch was the leader, and the monster knew I had finally caught his interest. Monarchs keep a watchful eye on the vast world below, and anyone who masters this deadly game is granted the power of the monarch to help them rule the earth. Bistron warned that the life a person would live depended entirely on which ruler they picked. Bistron said that if the man would just listen, he was willing to swear by his own name that he would use every bit of his strength to get the man before the great king. But this would only happen if someone was ready to keep playing until the very last moment. JHN says the monster talks like a shopkeeper trying to sell you something, but he is ready to do exactly what you asked. The walker said the game would begin in just 10 days. 9 days later, one has been grinding hard on hand-to-hand combat, while Bistron watched him fidget and mutter that the man was just too busy trying to get noticed. Beast thought the wait would be a little longer, but he knew it would all be over soon, even though he was forced to buy this tower because of those lying scoundrels who deceived him. They say the Lord himself built that ancient tower, a first-generation marvel, so old we can't guess its age, and the seller claimed it was a very profitable deal. If this tower had been a newer third-generation kind, people could have finished their training without losing their progress. So Beastin decided to shake everyone awake himself if they didn't wake up on their own. Beast was convinced he couldn't leave the game because of that tower. Bistron convinced himself, yet again, that tomorrow would be the last day of it all. The monster asked the man if he remembered what he was told, and Jay Huang said he did. Biston's heart raced with excitement, tears streaming down his face after waiting so long for this very day. The monster stared in surprise, wondering what the man was up to, but Juan simply replied that he was now in the game and ready to hunt Bistin. The walker felt his sword growing heavier after the strange particle dream, because every time he tried to strike, it felt like he was waking up from a deep sleep. On the 91st floor stood the black iron tree, a chosen guardian that Bistron said had never seen a walker like this before, wishing the event had happened sooner to make things easier for everyone. Jaheen was held captive and asked what the monster planned to do, but Bistron told him the man couldn't finish the game without his okay. Bistron shook his head and said he'd stop trying to talk the man around. Byron couldn't understand why the man thought the training would go on forever, since the Tower of Nightmares was set to shut itself down 100 days after it finished. The monster said he needed the man to live and join the game. Ji Huang told Beastin that his true name was the Sanctuary of Teasing, a being who had lived for 784 years, wandered 184 worlds, and now handed over his chosen group to the Black Monarch, the mathematician. Beastrin was shocked and couldn't figure out how the man knew that. Ji Huang claimed to be the gift the monster had waited so long for right here. Beastrin couldn't believe the man's boldness and the chaos around him, so he shouted that it couldn't be true just as the game reset kicked in. Our hero was suddenly swallowed by doubt, wondering if this whole adventure was just a dream, if a monster could really kill him, and how his scattered world could suddenly turn into words. After hesitating for a long time, Juan finally found complete certainty, broke through to true understanding, and the strict time limits were lifted. Beastrin declared that he would stop feeling sorry for the man and told him to give up before it was too late. The monster confessed that the man had accomplished so much in this world so quickly. Beastrin warned that the man still had to play the game, and his choices would only dig him a deeper hole. But the monster quickly saw that this wasn't just a simple restart. Jaehang warned Beastrin one last time to really listen, because people aren't just items to be sold, aren't so small they can be turned into game tokens, and certainly aren't things you can just slap a price tag on. The man said he wouldn't follow the monster's plan anymore, so the walker lifted his sword high to strike the monster's head. Jae-Huan declared once more that he would keep shattering everything and climbing higher up the tower until he could destroy the mortal world built by those villains. Beastrin shouted for the man to halt because there was nothing higher, but Johan argued that something was up there. Jaheen felt he wasn't here by accident and wondered if the Tower of Nightmares was truly built by the demon sitting at the top of the Tree of Illusions. Jan was certain that records of Mork, the Tower of Nightmares creator, must exist, and when the walker pointed out that this was where the Tree of Illusions began, Beastrin asked what Jahan was thinking, and Jahan replied that if there was a root, then a trunk must also be there. If he broke through the ceiling to make a passage above, Beastin said the tower couldn't be treated that way, even as an unknown error interrupted the training while a search for other walkers in the Tower of Nightmares went on with no one found. Deep inside the wild forest, the man finally found it. A host of monsters suddenly showed up right before the armed warrior. The fight was fierce and left them all dead, yet the warrior claimed the monsters here weren't actually that strong. After the fierce monsters, strange green creatures showed up, with one demanding to know how the man dared, but since they spoke in gibberish, he couldn't understand a word. The man agreed to trade them the monster's horn from his back in exchange for knowing the name of the place. But the deal failed, leaving the young man to battle the creatures. He knocked one onto its back and held his sword to its throat, demanding to know where it was from. Juan thought the green creatures were weak since he couldn't get any info from them, and he destroyed one. But he was wrong because they turned out to be far from simple. Jihan still couldn't tell what things were around him, so he pulled the remains of the defeated monsters away. The system told the guy to use a backpack for his items, but he thought it had broken after he left the Tower of Nightmares. Ji believed she could reach other worlds, but she was wrong. It was a relief that he had some way to get information, and among the strange things he received were all sorts of crystals, including a spirit stone that he could make stronger. The crystal's color was different, yet the magic inside was the same, and since someone here makes these stones, they must be incredibly valuable. Jawan spotted a map labeled Tree of Illusions and Chaos, and realized the tower guy had left him in the dark about this hidden spot. A woman walked straight up to the monster, with a few others trailing right behind her. The woman apologized, promising to find a new place to hunt so no one would get hurt, but the warrior laughed and said that her beauty was the only thing that saved her this time. Perched high on a rock, the warrior stayed hidden and quietly watched the people below. One thought the girl looked tougher than the rest, yet they couldn't stand each other, and if things kept going this way, they'd die before even escaping the Tower of Nightmares. As the monster lunged at a warrior, the girl screamed out, "Hyun, be careful." One had to jump forward and smash the monster to stop it. The girl asked who he was, wondered if they could take him with them if he had destroyed Big Horn, and Jahan said he didn't mind, while she also noticed that the trophy horn behind his back was somehow special. The warriors understood that they needed at least 10 of them to bring down Big Horn, the terrifying beast whose strength grew with every horn, just like the 5-horn monster one had already defeated. The girl questioned our hero about his identity, for in this chaotic world, no single strike could ever topple the mighty Big Horn, and even Jae Hwan struggled to grasp what chaos truly meant. One warrior stepped forward, curious about why that man was there, and if his name was Juong. The warrior noted that such things rarely happen here, and wondered if they could truly take the monster's body, especially after that stranger claimed he was just passing through yet tore the thick-horned beast apart without even trying. Even her special powers couldn't help the woman in this situation, which means this guy's abilities must be something completely different from what the system allows. The girl asked her questions and warned him that chaos wasn't simple, noting there were only a few weak spots to exploit and that no one could destroy Bighorn with just a quick strike. Jihan asked once more, "What does chaos mean?" And the girl was surprised to wonder if he was joking or why he cared so much about such a strange question. The girl was shocked that the man didn't seem to get her question about who he was, even though John insisted he understood everything perfectly. Once he stepped into the tower, the hero decided that everything he had ever known on Earth no longer mattered. He found new friends and made fresh memories with them, but once graduation came, they vanished like a mirage, leaving him wondering if starting over would have saved those moments, even though they would have forgotten him and their shared past. Jihan told the girl he didn't remember anything, and she asked if that meant he had amnesia. A weird sword suddenly showed up in the guy's hands, so the girl thought it was a super weapon, proving that real power comes from the weapon itself, not from being strong. The other warriors were stunned, wondering if this truly was a super weapon and why this guy decided to show it off. The girl felt this man had ruined her mission, so she decided not to rely on him and instead made her own proposal. The girl named Mino explained the chaos to them, and they started talking about the vicious Red Fox squad. Jahin wondered if the girl truly wanted him to face those men, but Mino told him they would come for him soon, and he would understand everything on his own. One of the warriors warned that darkness was falling, so they decided to stay put since traveling at night would only make them attract dangerous monsters. I figured the map showed a village nearby. A warrior told the boss that this guy's energy was too low. He only managed to beat Bighorn because he found a super weapon in the dangerous abyss where the tree of illusions grows. Jihan guessed these people were up to no good and would panic if they found out he had the weapon, so maybe someone was hunting for it. Suddenly, Juan noticed someone moving toward him, and the girl asked why he was lying there while those people were already coming after him, realizing he had to use his sword to fight them. Jan told the girl he had lent his sword to someone for the night shift, leaving her wondering if he was truly that careless. Before Jae Hwan and Mino could react, they were swarmed by attackers, one of whom warned the intruder that dealing with the Red Fox clan would bring trouble. The girl asked if the scoundrels truly wanted bloodshed, and in that moment, Jawan finally saw her true heart. The villains charged at the propagandist to destroy him, but the girl blocked them and told the scoundrels they had sealed their own doom. The villain leader confessed that he knew right away Mino was a real witch, and her attack with monsters was no accident. One of the villains asked just who had summoned the ghost warriors. Mino just shrugged and said it didn't matter, knowing that these scoundrels had already destroyed many newcomers who didn't know what they were doing, and she was certain that many people in Chaos wanted them dead. The villain sneered that the ghost warriors wouldn't come to help such hopeless folks. It was most likely just a special case, meaning the witch would die right here and now. Mino wondered if that scoundrel really counted only on his super weapons. The villain laughed and said he had another plan, as 40 more clan members stepped out from the bushes, and she couldn't believe she thought he would face a ghost witch and a man who once killed a giant horned beast all by himself without any backup. A new warrior stepped forward and claimed he never would have traveled this far, if only he had known he could grab the super weapon so easily. Mino was shocked to find Black Fox there, realizing that only a few things had happened in his life recently. The Black Fox led the Red Fox clan from the 3rd level. The clan leader spoke up, saying that more than half of his men had come together just for her. Mino knew she couldn't beat the clan leader on her own, not when he was as strong as a 3rd level warrior. The girl told Johan that she couldn't keep him safe. It was better for him to run, and at the same time, she tossed him the Nightmare Stone. Mino revealed that the Stone of Return was the key to reaching the nearest fortress, and she was the only one who possessed it. Jae Hwan believed the stone didn't send him back to the past, but instead kept him safe right now. So he asked the girl if she could go back, and if she would do it, leaving Mino confused and wondering if that was really the right time to ask such questions. The girl said she had worked hard her whole life, and that if she were to die, it would be today because she would never go back to the past. Jahoan pulled his sword from its sheath and declared that she would not die today. The protagonist ignited his 14th flame form to cast the forgotten spell, leaving Mino stunned as she realized her mistake and admitted just how powerful he truly was. The girl asked who he truly was, leaving Johan stunned and wondering if she had forgotten him or suffered from memory issues like he did. Mino insisted he give back the stone he'd taken from her, but Jahan said he had lost it. Mino was so angry that he couldn't believe he had lost something so valuable. The girl looked everywhere but couldn't find the stone, and she wondered if she really had to waste her time on this. One said he was just a normal person, but the girl thought he was just making fun of her. Sitting by the night fire, Mino wondered if being human was truly enough, and the next morning, while walking a forest path, he asked the young man if he had really forgotten everything about the great earth since stepping into chaos. She told him that he'd probably be lucky just to forget a thing or two. Johan was shocked and asked why anyone would envy losing their memory, only for Mino to hint that she knew how everyone ended up in chaos and how she herself got there. She warned him that if he really understood what he was saying, he'd regret it the moment he heard her answer. The young folks reached the Gorgon Fortress, and Juan thought it looked just like the first floor of the Tower of Nightmares. Everyone begged for mercy, and Juan knew that look all too well. Mino told the man that there were now 1,000 times more of them, and after he got the message, she asked him to stop asking how she ended up in the chaos. The girl explained that while dying on Earth leads to chaos, dying here means your soul becomes food for the Tree of Illusions. So an officer stepped forward and ordered everyone to line up for work. The officer whispered to one person that he had died from weakness before draping his naked form in a cloak. Officer James asked Mino why she was at the North Gate, and when she said she was just dropping by, he let her pass quickly since they already knew each other. James spoke that everything had changed, so now everyone entering the fortress must prove who they were. Mino told her she'd completely forgotten her ID. She pressed the horn of the big horn into the officer's hand as her payment. The officer tucked the horn away, claimed he'd checked the girl's ID, then demanded Jay's papers, but Janu just said he had none, leaving them wondering what to do next. Mino glanced at the young man and told him she was in a tough spot, but if he asked for help, she promised to give it to him. James warned that walking into the fortress without an ID was a big no-no. Juan nodded that he got it, and Mina started to wonder what he would do next. Jihan drew his sword and shut down the guards near the officer, leaving Mina shocked and wondering if he could really do such a thing, while Juan asked if she was ready to come with him. Suddenly, the famous checkpoint Captain Carlton appeared, looking stern and stubborn, and warned that things were getting out of hand. The captain stepped up to James and demanded to know what was happening right there. The officer said a man was trying to sneak into the fortress without any ID, but the captain said it couldn't be done, so Juan asked why. The captain told us that if he couldn't verify who we were, he'd be allowed to turn us away. I thought the captain was just following the fortress rules. Our hero tossed aside the laws, gripped his sword's hilt, and declared he wouldn't even show an ID card. The captain was shocked his trick had failed, meaning he'd have to follow the rules, throw the young man in jail, and chain him up with silver shackles. The soldiers stared in awe as the stranger broke free from his chains with ease, and the captain immediately asked how he had done it. Jan asked Mino if he could do the same as her, and the girl was surprised because she wasn't sure exactly how she had done it. G tossed an object into the captain's open hand. James screamed in anger, blaming the young man for buying the captain's favor and demanding he be put to death right away. Captain Carlton asked if the man's name was Jay Huang, and when the young man confirmed it, the captain revealed he had been waiting because he was Gossip's messenger. A message came in saying our souls were more than 15% broken, and we had to take medicine right away. The captain was shocked to see the girl's spirit changed and insisted she knew exactly what to do, and Mino nodded in agreement. Jay Huan asked what soul destruction was, and Mino was shocked that he knew so little about it. Soul destruction is a slow-burning sickness that quietly eats away at the souls of everyone trapped in chaos. That's why the bighorn is so precious because, as Mino remembered when James heard about it, it's the only thing that can stop a soul from being destroyed. She told him that thanks to this young man, she finally got the horn. Captain Carlton checked Yon's eyes and found that there was no trace of soul destroyed inside him. The captain told them he'd checked the stone the young man gave him and was giving it back, which left Giant wondering why he needed to take it away at all. The captain warned that the spirit stone wasn't for just anyone, but Giant argued he wasn't a messenger at all. Juan and Mino headed to the city, and later James asked the captain if he could let these two strangers go. Carlton asked James if he knew what a spirit stone was, and James answered that it was a special object that made your spiritual power grow. The captain stared at his blistered hand as the officer explained that the spirit stone was to blame. Only the Gossip's messenger can move the stone, and though the captain isn't sure the young man is that messenger, he still holds control over it. James wondered if he could trust this man, and the captain said he trusted this man's soul more than anything else. The captain added that the device fails to notice a soul's destruction in just one special case. This happens when someone's soul is so pure they stand alone in the mess. It didn't matter if he was just a messenger, because the fortress cared only about the spirit stone he held, and when James asked if this was tied to the owner's sickness, the captain shook his head and said he didn't know. The captain whispered that James might be the one taking bribes to let these people pass. Jaheen felt lost in the city's confusing streets, but Mino stayed right beside him. As the captain waved goodbye to the young travelers, he gently reminded Mino to keep his ID safe, since Jay Huan had asked him to look the other way this time, though he made it clear that taking bribes was never allowed. The captain hoped Mino would finally see reason after hearing those words, and the officer wished them a good stay at Gorgon's fortress. Jae-hwan was amazed that the spell held on so long. Yet he kept his distance from the captain, who looked like trouble waiting to happen, and instead asked a passerby if they knew a good blacksmith. The stranger walked past and said he didn't know anything at all. One saw the girl finally wake up, offered her his best wishes, and then he turned and walked away. Mina was furious, thinking, how could he just walk away after he got angry at me for wanting to leave the fortress? One said he'd helped her get through, but now she'd just get in his way. The young man told her that they were too different for each other and that she needed to go her own way. Mina was furious that he didn't even know where to go, but one promised to ask strangers and said he needed a horse to keep moving. Mino told him she knew where a horse was hidden and could show him the way. Giant explained that his first plan was to tackle one thing with just one person. Strangers shouted to the young people, asking if they had the glowing hot sword. Mino gave them a clear choice: run for their lives or face the danger. One of the bad guys saw the youngest one going through puberty and flew into a rage over Miho's rude behavior. The villain warned that unless they handed over the sword, they'd both get hurt or pay a heavy price to stay alive. The biggest bad guy asked if his partners could fix things without fighting. The villain swung his axe, growling that they'd have to pay for their rude behavior. Jae-hwan told how he silenced the noisy crowd along the way by swinging his sword. Mino was stunned to see how Mino ended his opponents with a single strike, while Jae-hwan simply admitted he only knew how to lunge, moving with light, normal, and strong force. Mino questioned why Jae-hwan dealt the final blow and shattered the roof, to which Jae-hwan replied that an opponent had turned invisible during their fight, and he broke the roof just to scare him. Mino stared in shock, wondering how anyone would blow up a roof just to scare someone, while Jae-hwan looked equally baffled and asked if that wasn't just the normal way things were. The young people made their way to Twilight Fall, the most famous smithy in Gorgon. The blacksmith named Neen offered his help to the young people, but warned them that even an order placed right now would take time to finish. Mina gasped in surprise, wondering how so many orders could pile up, but Naven explained that only the deputy owner was working at the smithy today, so they had to get busy. He suggested it was smarter to grab something ready-made instead of waiting around for it to be built. The blacksmith showed her a dagger carved from Keto Horn and said it would be done once he carved a slot into the handle. One of the young men stepped forward, eager to lend a hand and begin work on the dagger. The blacksmith Michael Garnered, who worked for the owner, asked the young men if they knew that antler is incredibly tough and if they were sure they could handle it. Michael liked the young people's attitude and said that whoever could make a notch in the handle would get to run the forge for a day. The blacksmith told the crowd that the young people were too weak to leave even a single scratch on the task. A customer walked into the smithy, but Naven stopped him, and after one asked if he could try, Michael Garnered wondered if this was the wandering blacksmith, only for the blacksmith to say it was impossible and that the stranger was wrong to think it was easy. So our hero declared he could do it, because he was so skilled and knew how hard it was to work with the horn of a fur-horned animal. After finishing his job, Jawan asked if he could help the blacksmith out for the day. But when the knife snapped and shattered, the blacksmith flew into a rage, screaming at the boy to know the horn's price, and daring him to break something so precious. Jaheen confessed that while the handle was easy to snap, it was hard to cut a slit in it, and he felt truly sorry for the mistake. The blacksmith stared in shock, wondering if the boy truly believed a simple apology could fix something made from such rare and costly metal. The blacksmith stared at the shattered weapon, wondering what he would tell the customer. The young man promised to give him an even better horn in return, and the blacksmith couldn't believe it since he didn't know where someone could find such an expensive one. Jihad pulled a 5-horn horn from his pocket, and the blacksmith stared at it in shock. Jihan wondered if a single horn from a real unicorn was enough, but the blacksmith said it would have to do since he had no other choice. Our hero sighed with relief that he could finally help out in the smithy, even though he was still in charge of buying things. The blacksmith knew his forge was the finest in the fortress of Gorgon, packed with the best tools and hands, so now that the young man was his assistant, he could use whatever he needed. Jihan thanked the blacksmith for the chance, and Michael asked where the boy had found the horn. Jan said he'd earned it himself with hard work, leaving the blacksmith surprised as the assistant nodded to confirm that the young man had actually killed the 5-horned beast all by himself. The blacksmith stared in shock, asking if the boy really did it all by himself, but Johan just said he needed help making a sheath for his sword, even though it would be his very first time. The blacksmith couldn't believe his eyes as he wondered if the young man truly meant to use the legendary garnet horn. Jay showed the blacksmith his sword, and the blacksmith was surprised again, wondering if it was a copy of the ice dragon's blade. The blacksmith explained that crafting a scabbard for that weapon was too hard, so he suggested forging a brand new sword out of the horn instead. The blacksmith was shocked to find that the weapon he was staring at was actually made of pure spirit. A higher race was feeding on the sword's spirit, and the blacksmith saw it growing stronger with every change. Because the sword was slowly changing shape, the young man had to give it a new name by the time it was finally done. The blacksmith saw the sword soaking up the material, but Jay Huang just laughed and said he had plenty more to spare. The blacksmith asked the deputy if he could help, and the young man eagerly agreed, wanting to watch how the blacksmith shaped the metal. The blacksmith answered that he was ready to show what he could do. Inside the fortress, the commander learned that every bandit was dead, yet the target vanished, so the minister Gorgon Yen Seber demanded to know how that could have happened. The man said he couldn't explain because he had passed out and woke up on the roof. The minister wondered if the target could sense him, realizing that sensing such a powerful invisible master meant the target was at least as strong as a 5th-level expert. Tubber said we needed to gather more folks to help search the fortress. The whole tavern held its breath as everyone watched the news unfold. The news girl said it was time to say goodbye, but she wanted to talk about the latest video on the lone hero from the 99th floor, leaving everyone wondering where he was now. Someone whispered that the tower had frozen the cultivation process, likely because the owner tried to cheat and got caught. Rumor says he threw it all away and ran. But a lone hero can't clear the tower. It wouldn't make sense for a powerful demon to burn it all down and vanish. Someone said it makes sense to sell all our stuff before we go, because nobody just runs away with their house. Mino burst into the tavern with such a showy entrance that everyone stopped to stare. One customer asked if she was alone, but Mino told him to back off, and he quickly decided to leave her alone. Mino ordered a huge mug of alcohol, saying she wanted to drown herself in it, while ranting angrily at herself about how crazy and arrogant the guy was acting. Mrs. Claire, the tavern owner, told Mino to calm down because she wasn't drunk yet, but she was already talking nonsense. Claire pointed out that with so many men around, it made no sense for her to keep focusing on just one. Mino explained that seeing him made her want to scream because he was ruining everything around him and swinging his sword wildly, as if nothing mattered. Mino mentioned that he speaks in very strange ways. Mino explained that they were all giving everything to survive, but then this stranger suddenly showed up and kept looking down on her like she was nothing. Claire tried to soothe the girl, telling her she was acting like a child and shouldn't even approach that man. Claire whispered that if Mino stayed with her, she would surely die, but then a bird crashed into the tavern, dropping a scroll right before the girl that was a letter from Captain Carlton of the North Gate addressed to Mino, the terror of the dark forests. As the girl opened the scroll, she felt a chill of unease run down her spine. A man standing nearby grabbed the girl's arm and asked, "Are you really a witch of slaughter?" before adding that he had no time for rude behavior and needed her help right away. The blacksmith who worked with the horn told Jay Huang he couldn't take on the material anymore because his tools wouldn't even listen to him. But Jay Huang reminded him that it wasn't about how strong the material was, it was about understanding it. The first step of rebirth is a doubt so strong it shatters the very world, followed by the second step of realizing and accepting what remains in ruins. As soon as those words were spoken, the horn started to change its shape right before the blacksmith's eyes, leaving him completely confused. The blacksmith and the walker looked up and saw a huge monster rising from the horn right in front of them. Jan noted that since the blacksmith had stepped up to help, he was determined to do the job right. The blacksmith stammered in terror, asking if that monster was truly Garnick's horn and if he had foolishly tried to fight it. So overwhelmed was he by the sight that he thought he must be dreaming and desperately needed to wake up. The blacksmith shouted for help and sprinted out of the forge, only to find skeletons and other dead things everywhere, leaving him wondering if this nightmare world was real and how he could have ended up here. In this world, some lines are too strong to break, no matter how hard you try, because you can never push past your own limits or rise high enough to reach the level of a nightmare. The blacksmith sighed, feeling that he was too old to handle Gorik's horn and wishing he had arrived earlier. The blacksmith admitted the walker had been waiting for the Nightmare Forge's owner for a long time, and though he felt sorry that only a pathetic person like him remained without ever building a single tower, Jia Huang told him it didn't matter. The guy said the blacksmith was skilled with weapons and kept trying, even after failing hundreds of times. Ji said that if that were true, he'd have to give it a shot millions of times. The blacksmith noticed that he kept trying over and over, never giving up. The blacksmith declared he had mastered every blacksmithing skill, so he confidently vowed he could fix any weapon in the Tower of Nightmares. But the moment he succeeded, strange thoughts began to creep into his mind. Instead of chasing a near-perfect score, he just wanted to avoid the tiny risk of failing. She knew this man worked harder than anyone else, but did he truly get the secret behind the craft? The nightmare craft skill was here from the start, as old as fire and water, yet people still struggle to grasp the world's true shape and wonder why we bother trying to explain it all. Jin asked the blacksmith if he really meant that the tools gain their own strength and learn to work with the horn just by being touched by spiritual power. The young man couldn't understand why the students still struggled with something that seemed so easy, so the blacksmith calmly told him they just hadn't learned it quite well yet. The blacksmith believed that since the secret to the craft was so easy, there was no reason to bother learning it at all. Ji Han felt shocked because the blacksmith, who didn't understand the skill's true nature, kept using it, and when asked if anyone knew its secret, the master simply wanted to know if the young man understood how it worked. Jan asked the blacksmith to take a good look at the horn and tell him exactly what he saw. The young man saw that hard work had built the blacksmith's world into something stable, and he thought that was fine, but he wondered if the master truly understood that if someone couldn't succeed after trying so hard, the problem wasn't them, but the world itself. The blacksmith was taken aback, as he'd never seen things from that angle before. The monster warned that the blacksmith's way was perfect for nightmares, but not for people. So the question remained, what kind of magic would actually help us?